It is time to go through all of the books that I read the month of February. I read a total of 7 books. 4 of those were physical, 1 was on my Kindle, and then 2 were audiobooks. So let's dive into it. The first book that I read was Reckless by Lauren Roberts, and this is the second book in her trilogy. I rated this 4 stars. The banter between our 2 main characters is still 10 out of 10. A lot of people felt like this was a repeat of the first book, which I kind of agree. However, I was still thoroughly entertained. I do feel like this is a bit of a filler book. Not a lot happens with the plot of this story, so you're really kind of just following our main characters through an adventure with them. I still found it very entertaining. I also like how we got another character's perspective in this book. Just a couple chapters, there weren't a lot, but I was really entertained. I really liked it. The next book that I read was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and I listened to this on audiobook, and I rated this 5 stars. This is a mystery thriller about Josie, who meets Alex, who is this podcaster. Josie has a very mysterious life, and she crossed paths with Alex. They end up being birthday twins. They were born on the same day, and they make this connection, and a couple days later they end up crossing paths again, and Josie wants to share her story on Alex's podcast. Lots of mysteries are uncovered, and you don't really know what's going on and who to believe. The audiobook of this is 10 out of 10 amazing. It's very documentary style. They have like the podcast clips, so they have different voice actors, and it literally sounds like you are watching a Netflix documentary or listening to a crime podcast, and it is so entertaining. Absolutely loved this book. I don't know if I would like it as much in the physical book, just because I think the audiobook really elevated the story because of the voice actors and how they kind of portrayed the story. But regardless, it was really good. It was very much mystery, kind of trying to figure out what this girl's story is and what's true and what's not true, and it was just amazing. I loved it. Next up, I read Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams, and this is part of an interconnected standalone series. The first book is When in Rome, and this is the second book, and in this book, it follows the main male character in the first story's sister, Annie, who owns a flower shop, and she is very determined to find her husband. Our main male character is Will, who is the bodyguard of the main female main character in the first book, if you can follow that. This book I rated 3 stars. It is a very cringy, cheesy romance read, but it's very entertaining. In this story, basically, our main character is helping our female main character finding the love of her life. You follow them on this journey and watch them fall for each other. It's very, like I said, cringy, cheesy, but it's such a good palate cleanser, and it's an entertaining read. Next up, I listened to The Wedding People by Allison. I don't know how to say her last name, and I don't want to butcher it. I rated this 3 stars. In this story, we are following Phoebe, who ends up going to this grand hotel, and she is at absolutely rock bottom. Her life is in shambles, and she's just not in a good place at all. She ends up getting mistaken as a wedding guest for this big wedding that is happening at the hotel. It just kind of follows her throughout this journey of being mistaken as a wedding guest. In this story, there's a very heavy topic that is pretty casually discussed, and I don't know how I felt about it. The story in itself is very humorous, but also there is a lot of depth to it, but the topic in particular that this story is discussing feels a little bit too casual for what we're talking about, and so honestly, I didn't love how casually it was talked about. I do think that there's a reality that some people deal with traumatic situations with humor, and so I think that's kind of what this story was trying to do. However, this topic, I just don't think you can so casually bring it up in kind of this like light, fluffy story. That's kind of why I rated it 3 stars, because I didn't love kind of the overarching theme. that it was trying to discuss. Other than that though, I really did enjoy the story, and it was really fun to see our main character bond and get to know these strangers that end up becoming kind of important people in her life. So it was an okay read. Next up, I read The Favorites by Lane Fargo on my Kindle, and I absolutely ate this story up. I rated this 4 stars. In this story, we are following Katarina and Heath, who are professional figure skaters, and it is a very toxic, dramatic story. These 2 characters are determined to become the best in the world, and so you're following kind of their journey as they are coming up in the figure skating world. Also reminded me a lot of Daisy Jones and the Six, because it does have that interview style. There's like a couple chapters where it's interviewing different people about the couple, and then there's also like the story that you're following. It was such compelling storytelling. That is the one thing that I really enjoyed about this book, is it felt like I was reading about actual figure skaters. Literally, when I was done reading this, I started looking up figure skating videos. I just had to watch people figure skate because I was so fascinated by that world and this story, and I was like, Katarina and Heath have to be real. They have to be real figure skaters, and they're not. But it was very compelling storytelling. It reminds me, if Magnolia Parks and Daisy Jones and the Six had a baby, that would be this book. Next up, I read Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher, and I rated this 5 stars. This book is a hefty book. However, I could not stop reading this. I could not put it down. I was thinking about this when I wasn't reading it. I loved it. Some people I know think that this is a really long book, because it is. I mean, it's 600 pages for a romance book is a little insane. But I was just absolutely obsessed with this story. This story is part of an interconnected standalone series. The first book is Love Redesigned, and I absolutely loved that. We are following Raphael, who is the cousin to the main male character in the first book, and it also follows Ellie, who is Raphael's nanny to his son. Ellie writes music, and Raphael owns his own company with his cousin. This story was so unbelievably beautiful. They both have very traumatic pasts. There are some heavier topics, so I definitely would read some trigger warnings, especially because there is talks around anxiety and self-harm and things like that. But I think that this book did such a beautiful job addressing those things, making it very realistic and not over the top either. That wasn't our characters' entire personality. They were so much more than the things that they went through. I just loved this book. There were so many great quotes in here. The banter was great. I loved watching our 2 characters grow and become more vulnerable. Raphael is an extreme workaholic, and he has went through several nannies, and Ellie is finally a nanny that has stuck around, and his son adores her, and he's kind of going through a really difficult time with his son. That was also really beautiful to just see their relationship grow. Sometimes when kids are in books, it's kind of cringy, but in this story, the kid was so cute, and I was loving it. The dynamic between all 3 of them was adorable. It wasn't cringy at all. I absolutely loved it. This was my favorite book this month that I read. Also, I kind of match the cover, so that's cute of me. So I loved this book. Next up, I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams, and this is the 3rd book in the interconnected standalone series. I rated this 3.5 stars. In this book, we are following Emily, who is the oldest sister, and her arch nemesis, Jack. They are both teachers. They have hated each other or had this weird competition with each other since college. We follow them. They end up becoming neighbors, and a situation happens where Jack ends up helping Emily with a situation she gets herself into. Again, this is kind of a cheesy, easy read. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's a fun read. That is all the books that I read in the month of February, and I really enjoyed reading all of the books that I read. I'm excited to dive into some more books in March. Quick little side note, I finally got a bookshelf, and I am so excited about it. As you can see, it's right here. It's gorgeous. She's cute. She's thriving. And all my books finally have a home and they're not like stacked in random places throughout my house. So very excited that I finally have a bookshelf, and I already think I need like 7 more bookshelves because she's full. So I got that going for me. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about the books that I read this month, and I can't wait to see what I get into in March. Bye.